This episode is powered by denmeditation.com. Though meditation is the primary focus, the bigger goal is for people to understand and love themselves, thus creating more harmony in the community at large. To find out more about Den Meditation's teacher training programs, retreats, and all things Den Meditation, go to denmeditation.com. Welcome, Anne, and hello, everybody. Welcome to Den Talks podcast. You have Anne Tucker for our March forecast. I am so excited to have you for March because, as you've already hinted, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say, there's a lot happening. And then just so you all know, the reason this one seems longer than our traditional forecast is because we are also going to then chat afterwards, because to be able to have Anne here is just such a gift. And I don't want to miss that opportunity where we don't get to talk about more stuff than just March. But let's start with the traditional forecast, which is when I kind of hand it over to you. Tell us what we have in store for March.
Yeah, so I got to tell you, this has actually been super fun because I don't usually ask the angels this question. I don't usually say, like, tell me about the month, like what's coming in the next month. And they were like down with it. And I asked specifically for an angel that had a more earthly perspective, that was a little bit more grounded to the earth. And they, like, it was super, super interesting what they brought up. So, and they did a little bit about like general energies, and they did a little bit about like specific stuff about like what are the specific, more tangible things that are going to happen. So the first thing they started out at, because the thing they're always interested in is like us and our spiritual growth and our awareness. Like that's what to them is like by far the most interesting thing. So that's what they start talking about. And they said that there was going to be an energy where we would be like, think about any like grudges or difficult relationships that feel like entrenched, where you cannot connect. You know what I mean? Like think about family members that you just haven't called for years because it's like, it just feels awful. Any friends where you just embattled relationships. And they said it would be in this coming month, and this is like month, 2 months kind of time period. It's an influence so it's an influence energy that's coming. They're saying that there will be a softening in these encounters. There's the opportunity for this to happen. They said it shows up differently for every person, but that there's an opportunity for a softening in these kind of entrenched relationships where feel like there's like insurmountable obstacles. Like think about people that you like on maybe opposite sides of the political spectrum, where you just cannot have a conversation to save your life, where there's a lot of polarity in the relationship. And they're saying these soften, and they say specifically, you know how they talk, we love how they talk, but they said that so it's a shift in perception that we have. And they said it'll be the instrument is the argument. So they said maybe it starts with an argument, but they say they say it is a distilled moment, an encounter, and you encounter each other in a new way. And it's literally as if all of a sudden the things that felt really hurtful all of a sudden lose their steam. Like all the energy which before was in this the energy just dissipates. And you have the ability to see yourself and your own behavior and your own actions in a new way. So you start to see your side of how you're perpetuating this dynamic, as well as you soften your resistance to them. And the same thing. And then they said it's like a blanket that happens equally. So each person is having this happen at the same time. So each person is starting to see themselves and to see their actions and how they're creating the dynamic, right? And then they soften to each other. So saying this is an opportunity that's coming in the coming months. Wow, this is super cool. And they said that this is then setting a foundation for which we will then draw on in the future, in future difficulties, in learning how to come together in times of difficulty. So it's almost like this is training wheels. Like they're saying, here's an experience where you're going to learn to come together with someone that you have not been able to come together with. And for one reason or another, right? Maybe it's just an issue. Maybe it's like it's one of those relationships, like maybe it's a sibling where you can only talk about the safe subjects or whatever it is, right? And that softens, and that is the training wheels getting us ready to experience the ability to come together in a deeper, more profound way during difficult times in the future. So yeah, wow. So that was the first. Isn't that cool?
Very.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that
It's
was the
like,
first energy they said that was coming. So was
I
that
love how
anything on
it's
that
like,
one? Any thoughts or questions on that one?
I kind of just love how they're like, all right, you guys haven't been able to figure it out. So we're going to just
Yeah.
remove the shitty energy that's been sitting in your body that's not been allowing you to do it. So now you have no excuse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, and that's pretty much it. It's like all of a sudden it's literally like and they say it's like, the way I visualize it is they're talking about it's like it just deflates. Like everything that seemed like it was so insurmountable before, just all of a sudden isn't anymore. So
It's
we
like
can
you
just
just
get over
have,
ourselves.
like you said, it's perspective change. Like all of a sudden you have the ability to be like, this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I
So
love that.
super, super cool. And they say this comes at a time in your future when the long drawn out beginnings seem to come to term and you are rising within yourselves more profoundly and certainly. So they say in the future, this will come with this ability or this perspective shift comes to bear in the future at a time in the future. So that it's like, this is laying the groundwork, preparing us, right. To learn to come together into oneness more easily. Yeah. Super, super
Well,
cool.
and again, we'll have a bigger conversation. You know, I'll just hold it. Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next one is I'm calling the creative spark of individualism, and this one is they're saying that there's almost like there's an internal conflict within ourselves, right, and that we start to let that go. That we here. Let me get to the main meat of it here. That there's emotionality that comes from, they said, from the depths of who we are, and we should come to term with that, with the more violent prospect of the violent prospect of your own internal surrender to self. So it's literally like there'll be parts of ourselves that rise up that we may have been even unaware of, but they're authentic parts that have been repressed. And these energies that are coming in the same way that we surrender our resistance to another person, we have the opportunity to surrender to ourselves. So it's literally like, you can imagine, it's the same energy. It's just one energy is external, and then the other way we're expressing it is internal. It comes together as individualism, as this is who I am, right? So it's that fearless expression of this part of yourself. So in the same way that we'd say, for example, we had resistance to that person we were experiencing polarity with, where are we in polarity internally? That resistance drops down as well. And so we have the ability to let this rise up. And they say it can be areas that we're totally unconscious of, that all of a sudden we feel the need to express. So it's a cool aspect.
So it's basically, there's going to be, like, in a very basic way, almost, it's like you could all of a sudden be attracted to a hobby you never thought you were before.
Yeah.
Or there's like
Yeah.
interests or things that all of a sudden are developing. Like, and even, we see that in kids all the time, right? Like a kid, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't know my child's like a fashionista, or my child is amazing at languages, or my child is an incredible chef, right? I feel like that happens with
Yes.
kids, but it almost
Yeah.
feels like as grown adults, we might have these like discoveries, which could be
Yeah.
really purposeful.
Yeah. Or it could even be something where it's like, I had this feeling in the past that this was like something I was interested in, but I didn't realize how important it is to me. And all of a
Mm.
sudden you're like, wow, this actually really matters to me and I'm committed to this. Or it could be a thing where you're sort of like, wow, I really like, you discover that something that you were putting up with for a long time that you really don't like, that you're
Mm.
like, wow, that behavior, I really don't like that. I'm not going to accept that behavior anymore. I was living with it because I just kind of accepted it. And now there's this part of me that's coming up that's saying, no, that's not okay. You can't treat me that way. However it is, that whatever it is that comes up in ourself, there's a piece of our identity of like, this is who I am. Or maybe something that where you're really divergent in ways that people don't want you to be divergent, right? Like maybe you're going to come out like an angel channel and people are going to be like, oh, I don't like you being that way. I want you to be like me. And
Right.
so, so something like that, where something comes up, a self-awareness, like an acceptance. It's like it's the same thing of like where we were in polarity externally, where are we in polarity internally, and that softens and gives the opportunity for this individual expression. So, which is super cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I know, right? So the next thing they say is that we will be feeling a lack of endurance. So they're saying that it's like almost like we feel a little bit weaker in our physical bodies. And we worry. They say this causes a little bit of fear in us. And the way they describe it, a fear settles among yourself that you shall not make the yards, the sense of distance. So it's almost like we think that that, and it feels, it's like a heavy, so there'll be some heavy days is what they're saying, where they even say that we'll feel like that it can be overwhelming, that you feel settled within your own heart to endure no longer, as though giving up were a preference. There might be days where you just feel like you have no will, where you're just like, ugh.
Mm.
And they're saying that not to resist those days. And they say it in such a beautiful way that where is it, that basically that these feelings, that these moments of lowness are important to our overall process. They say, count upon your heart in these times to know yourselves in need of momentary lapses of energy, and that the restorative value of these agonizing times of disquiet is enormous. So they're saying
Mm.
that to go into is to allow it, not judge it, to say, I feel really exhausted today. I feel like whatever I was really fired up about 2 days ago, I cannot find any desire to do. They're saying that if you allow that to just be as it is, it can be very restorative. And so allow it, allow yourself to have the lapse. And they say that it's a loss of amplitude and force in the body, and you'll endure and move beyond, right? And then in the coming, you'll carry a brighter, heavier endowment of grace because of it. So it's literally, and they've been talking about that with me a lot lately, about how when we go through our dark night of the soul, when we have those really, really heavy moments, that those enter the body, and it's literally almost like they hollow and create more space. Like imagine like it's a heaviness, like it's a weight, and how that weight, it pushes the boundary of what you are and expands you sort of at your depth. The weighty emotions make you bigger inside because you're carrying this heavy weight. It's like it stretches you out. And then that space then gets filled with more light. So and they've shown this to me in two ways. They've shown us both the weight, the expansion, and then you kind of pour in light, and there's just more space in you. You've hollowed out, you've created, because of the depth of the grief or the fear or the shame, whatever it is, it creates a spaciousness inside you that feels like, when you feel those energies, it feels like in the belly, you feel like this hollowness. So that hollowness is a blessing because it's spaciousness in the body to carry more light afterwards. And the second way they've shown this to me is like a slingshot, that it's literally like the depth of the deep, hard emotions pulls you way back. And then boom, you release and you're up to a higher height than you've ever been before. So that's kind of what they're alluding to here, is that when we have those really, really hard emotions, to recognize it's just a moment, and it hides or holds a blessing, which is that it is creating the depth inside of us to hold more grace.
And it's so interesting in context with the other energy they're talking about, of finding this individualism and the sense of what you like, don't like, need, don't need.
Yeah.
I could see how then having that energy of kind of a heaviness could feel even more heavy, because it might almost feel like that those are like conflicting things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like both of these are energies that are more internal. You know what I mean? It feels like overall the month is one where it's a good month for reevaluating, right? These are all sort of reevaluations, quieting down the system so you can see yourself and go internal a little bit more. So it's an interesting, I mean, just in terms of what they've named so far, that these are not energies that are like, go out and conquer and start new things. And it's more like, okay, see these entrenched problems, see them in a new way, see yourself in a new way. So they're more internal, I think, energies, which is interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So then they say that there's, that there will be that there's a surrounding light of the astral shall carry more force and weight upon you. So this is just a short mention. So it's like almost like there's more light coming to the planet. So I think it's probably talking about we're reaching the solar maximum soon. There's a lot of just solar energy hitting the planet. So this, I think, is just kind of a pile on. Like you have all these other energies, and then some of it is you also have the solar energy that's coming in. So it's just a little bit like, I think this is just a month to not judge where you're at and to, when things happen, to try to reflect, to be reflective. This is a really good month to be reflective and to see where you are and try to learn, and to be open to having your perspective shifted. Yeah. The next part, this is really interesting. So they said that there would be this upcoming time period. So it's kind of March, but it was kind of showing me that it extends beyond March. It's kind of March, April, kind of loose. And like, when will this all play out? But movement of peoples. So in mass, like large shifting, like big groups of people. And they specifically say that they would be, like without home, without family, like people who are uprooted, who are being moved from one. So large movements of people. But the interesting thing is they said that it's a transference of large amounts of people. The movement of peoples is a blessing that comes to be revealed. So it sounds like a tragic thing that there's these people who are uprooted, who are without their home, and they say all the different reasons that they might be people who are escaping one thing or another, coming of their own free will. It could be all different reasons. These people are moving large movements of groups of people. And then they say sometimes they are denied access to wherever they're. Sometimes they show up at your door and they're denied. So it's really the whole idea of like refugees, and it makes me think of like the border crisis in the U.S. It makes me think of all the war zones that we have right now, and that's me. That's not channeled, but that's where my mind goes. But we don't really know. It could be natural disaster. We don't know. But the interesting part to me was about to say that this is comes with blessings to be revealed, and they say that it'll be an ongoing current that makes its way through patterns of your consciousness. And they say the settled and unsettled feeling of those that have surrendered their port to the way and unfolding. So we don't know how this, but there is a significant impact that this is having on the collective consciousness. And they're not giving us a clue as to what it is. They're saying blessings will unfold. So they want us to be in the experience of this and to see how it affects us. So we might see people and look at how this has created such a polarized feeling in the U.S. Like there's people who feel very, very strongly on one side or the other, and people are being experiencing this really differently depending on where they are. Right? Are they in the city where the people are trying to come and settle, or are they somewhere else and saying, "Well, you guys deal with it"? Like where is the feelings? Where are people experiencing this for themselves? And so they're not really revealing to us how it's going to change us, but they're just kind of giving us that kind of like sly wink, like, yeah, this is going to have a big impact on you guys at the collective level. It is purposeful, and this is something you're going to be going through.
It's so interesting you mention, because I talk about this a lot with different perspectives. You mentioned, it depends, like, are you in a city and you're this, or you're here? Because I say one of the things about the lack of people understanding perspective is not nobody, that's such an unfair statement, but I think it's difficult for a lot of people to open up their purview to include someone else's situation. Meaning, you may think X is totally wrong, but then if you stop for a second and we're like, but what if I was this person and this is what was happening to me? Would I still think X was wrong, or would I maybe think Y was wrong and X was safe, or X was whatever the situation is? So I thought it was really interesting how that came out of your mouth, because I've always felt like that has been one of our biggest blocks and has been so dividing for us, especially in the US. It's like, because we're so varied and we're such a large country, it's, easy to not, understand how a coal miner feels if you're, living in LA, and it's easy not to understand how the teachers feel if you're here, and so then everyone has very strong opinions on certain policies. Not realizing there's other strong opinions that are also equally valid because it affects them differently.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that this issue of people who have been uprooted from their home, or who are escaping a life that doesn't make sense, that, a life that is not tenable, and trying to come to another place, like you can really feel the feelings on both sides. Like you can look at the person who has been uprooted, who has no choice, who just wants a life for themselves. And you can, like, all you can feel is compassion for that person, and you want to help. But then you look at the flip side of the people who are then saying, okay, our social systems are overwhelmed. There's no room in our hospitals, no room in our schools. We have our city is going bankrupt. And you feel the pain on both sides.
Yes.
And it is not an easy, there's no easy solution.
It's easy to judge the people saying, no, we don't welcome you because our systems, if you don't need those systems, or if it's not affecting you. But if you're someone who desperately needs it and it's being taken away from you, you may have a stronger opinion about it. I've always said that. It's like strong opinions usually come because it's not always, but a lot of times it's because it's affecting you. So that's interesting. So it feels like there's something in, because you've talked about perspective now a couple times. Right. So yeah.
And it makes sense because, like, in terms of they're kind of tipping their cards a little bit, saying that this will be something that will play out in the collective in a much bigger way, is that, the whole move is towards unity. The whole move is towards this concept of we are all one. And so a border crisis or any kind of movement of peoples where people are trying to figure out what's mine and what's yours, and we're trying to move to unity, that's going to be something we're going to deal with. You know what I mean? So it makes sense that this might be an ongoing theme. And I think they said it was a current. Yeah. That continues to move through. Yeah. This shall be an ongoing current that makes its way through the patterns of your consciousness. Yeah. So interesting.
That makes its way through the patterns. I mean, my whole body actually tensed up when you said that, because I was like, oh, fuck, that's long. Because like basically what it's saying
right,
is,
it's not
basically what they're saying
thing.
is like, here's a drip and it might affect your pattern this way, but for it to really like shake up the pattern, there's going to be lots of drips. The current is really going to have to come through.
Yeah, exactly. So the next thing, they get into some of the more specific things. They talk about the banking system, and they are starting to say that there will be small banks. And they said it'll be a gentle decline, not disguised or in denial, that they will find themselves in the pressure of the convergence of their own assets against the mired opportunities of their investments, and they shall be brought to their knees. So it sounds like small banks are going to be like dropping one after another, not like all overnight, but like one, another one, another one, another one, small banks. And they specify that it's almost the way they showed it to me, were like two, like a riptide. And they even say in the beginning that they cross currents and undertow that draws into them. So they show me the medium sized banks, and then they show me the small banks. And then the medium sized banks are like one cross current, and the small banks are the ones that succumb. And so that's what this is. The small banks may have some trouble in the coming months. So, and there may be some small bank failures on the horizon, and specifically because of their investments. It says like that their investments are not wherever they invested the money, it's not working for them. So, and then the last thing, which was a real mind bender, is they're saying that there will be institutions that take revenge against one another, against the bettering judgment of those they govern. So this one is like, it's not, this one I can't, I mean, like it's pretty clear, but I can't imagine how it will play out. So it's basically that, yeah, there will be a want for justice and a reaping of revenge against those who feel themselves perjured or in dialogue, inopportune moments of castration of the will of the people shall bring into focus and focal point the seldom seen revenge of one institution against another, against the bettering judgment of those they govern. So this is a whole passage, but they're basically saying that, so there'll be something in this where it's not really the will of the people. It's almost like there's something that happens. So imagine, okay, like one way this could play out would be like, imagine that there's, two political parties, and one political party feels like what they wanted didn't get met, right? That their will was not heard. And their leadership takes it like a jihad, where their leadership just takes it on, and they're like, we are going to fight to the death, but it's really about like power. And they're taking this one little whisper of the people, and they're like, we're going to ride this all the way. And it's like, they're going to make it almost like they're saying it'll be like getting revenge.
Sounds familiar.
Familiar. So they're saying that is an energy. Yeah, exactly. So against the bettering judgment of those they govern. So that is something they named as an energy we are stepping into. And these are all, like I said, these are all energies. Some of them they got fairly specific, but they are energies that we will feel personally, individually, and then on the collective level. So interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very. It feels like it's the beginning of, well, I mean, you've been talking about this a lot, and I guess, we can just now move into like a bigger conversation. I feel like you've been talking, I mean, you always talk about it. You're always talking about the state of the earth and the planet and the changes. And you've been very clear back in the past of the times that we're in, we're going to be tough. So I would love to talk a little bit about that, because it does feel like a little bit of what you were talking about from March. It feels like training for that. It's kind of getting people primed and ready.
Everything, I think, is training for that. Everything, like everything that every aspect of our lives is like really just a stage on which we are playing out our own wounding, and it is the whole goal of this whole experience is a desire for us to see ourselves and to love ourselves and to allow that wounding to be right, and to draw that. And it's that whole idea, like we hear about self-love, we have these platitudes about self-love, You'll see like stores will be like, love yourself, buy yourself some mascara. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not that. It is like allowing all of our wounding, allowing all of this. And so it is that idea of trying to find that unity inside of us, that higher connection to our higher self. So everything that happens, every moment of every experience that we have is an attempt to show us ourselves. And it's all leading up to, yeah, absolutely, this great shift in consciousness. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about you've been talking about this shift happening. Talk about the light, the beam of light that you've been talking about, or 3 beams, but talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit so people kind of understand, who may not follow regularly, may
Yeah.
understand what's happening.
Yeah. So the angels they started talking about, I actually looked back and realized the first time they mentioned it was in 2020. They talked about, back then they called it a wave of wonder, but I didn't understand at the time what they were talking about. And they only had one message about it. And now they've done many messages about it. And in the last couple of months, it's been like 6 or 7 messages all about the wave of light. And the interesting thing about this, because this has been something that's been really interesting to me, because I'm into dreams and I track dreams and I see a lot of dreams from a lot of people and prophetic dreams. And I recognize there are very specific symbols for prophetic dreams. So you can tell if any of these symbols are present, this is a prophetic dream. And there's not that, you will see a lot of people who dream about stuff and it's not prophetic. So I
I want to
know
hear
which
what
ones
those symbols are, because I remember when we
are.
talked last time, you talked about how if you sleepwalk in the dream, not if you're sleepwalking, but in the dream you're sleepwalking,
Yes.
that's a sign of like your psychic
Of
intuitiveness,
being a
right?
trance channel
You're a trance
specifically.
channeler, right?
Yeah,
Specifically.
being a trance channel. Yeah,
So
exactly.
cool.
So, oh yeah, totally. So if you in a dream, if you are, so if you see trumpeting angels, that's a dead giveaway for a prophetic dream. If in the dream you know something is about to happen before it happens, so you're like, I know this wave is going to come, and then it comes. That's a sign of prophecy, because you are in the dream, you are being prophetic. You're knowing before it happens. There's other dreams, such as other specific things like and most of the time, if you have a prophetic dream, you'll have multiple of these symbols will appear, not just one. It'll be like 2 or 3. So it's like self-confirming. You'll be riding on an eagle up high in the sky, and there'll be a trumpeting angel, or you will be knowing it's going to happen, and you will also have, so it's multiple of these symbols. But those are, and it's being up at a high place, looking down, like looking at a distance, seeing things at a distance. Like you could be looking through a spyglass at a distance. And so that would be, a sign you're seeing things in the distance that are coming. So these are some of the symbols that you might see in a prophetic dream. And so there's a lot. It's really funny for me because I see a lot of like prophetic dream channels on YouTube, and most of the dreams on them are not prophetic. They're talking about about much more personal issues.
Yes, their subconscious playing out, right?
Yeah, sometimes they will have a prophetic dream. Oh, that one I'm listening to. And the thing that was interesting to me is seeing how many prophetic dreams I have seen where they see 3 waves of something coming. And that 3 waves of something is, it can be 3 waves of light. Some people see it as light coming to the planet. Some people see it as waves, like tsunami waves, that actually like waves of water that come. But it's always 3 waves. Some people see it as moving through 3 mountain passes, right? You'll go through one mountain pass to a valley, through another mountain pass to a valley, another. So it's just always 3. And so yeah, there's 3 waves coming. And the first wave is this wave of light that's coming. And the angels, they have talked a lot. They have not talked at all about the second 2. I just know about them because, and I've had dreams of the 3 myself, and I've seen many, like hundreds of dreams, of prophetic dreams about 3 waves. But the angels have talked a lot about this first one, and they said it hurts no one, which is the most important thing. A lot of people are really worried that we're going to get, like a magnetic pole reversal and we're all going to die and there's going to be, the Carrington event. They said this is not that. The first wave does not hurt anybody. They said that it cannot miss you, that you could be in the basement in a windowless room and the light will still reach you. That they said it will soak into everything and everyone and soak into the planet itself. And that it is a light that is shifting of our consciousness. So it's a beautiful, positive thing. And they said that everybody will receive it. The only way you would not receive it is if you are in resistance to it. And the only way that it would ever be painful to you is if you're in resistance. And if that happens, you're not getting pain from the light. Your pain is your resistance. The pain is our own. It's just anything you push against, it hurts, right? So, and that resistance would take the form of resisting, like wishing things would stay the way they are, right? Being really dug in and saying, no, I want my life to be just the way I planned it. I want it to be the way I always thought it was going to be. And if it doesn't turn out that way, I'm going to fight tooth and nail trying to make it happen, the way I want it. And that would be resistance, rather than being in the flow of a pretty enormous shift in our consciousness. And the way that shift will take place, and it might be a thing that it happens, that I believe there will be an immediate effect. They said, the angels were very specific. They said, this would be the moment that we will look back on in the future. And they will say that was the moment that everything changed. So, but in the beginning, we might not recognize it as being as significant as it will be. So because I think it's an internal change of perspective and feeling. And then I think we get used to it and we acclimate to it. And I think as we get used to it and we acclimate and we open to it more and more, then the kind of effects that they said is that we can become very telepathic, where we start to feel each other's feelings as if they are our own, which would change everything, right? And how we interact with one another. And it would change. I think about that in terms of like world peace. Like imagine if we have world leaders coming together and they can feel each other's feelings, and really see the other person's perspective. So, but yeah, so this wave, and they said we will create very, very differently. So, and the people who accept the wave and the people who resist the wave are not going to be on two different, it's not going to be like mass death or something like that. Nobody's going to be like immediately jettisoned from the planet. It's not that wave. That's not happening. In this case, they say that basically the way that they showed it to me, and I was worried about that in the beginning because I was like, okay, so I'm looking at a neighborhood. I'm like, show me this neighborhood after the wave comes. Because I was worried, like, is it going to be chaotic? Is it going to be like, are we going to see everybody like all of a sudden coming together and helping each other? What's going to happen? And they show me the neighborhood, and I was driving through this neighborhood, and and I looked and I saw, oh my gosh, not all the houses are occupied. There was only certain houses, like that house had someone in it and that house had someone in it but all these other houses didn't. And so I was like, what is going on? Like, where'd they go? Did they get sick? Like, I didn't see any dead people. Like, what's going on? And they said, no, they were trying to show it to me from their perspective, from the angelic perspective of who is standing in the light. Who is the light? So just like if you were to turn the light on in a room, you're going to have areas of light and areas of shadow, and the shadowy areas you don't see as well. So which are the areas that have accepted the light? Which are the areas that are in resistance to the light, that are turning their back on the light, that are still in shadow? And what are the areas that have opened to the light and let it in? So we will all be still living in the same neighborhood. It's just that some people will have accepted and be in this new frequency. It really is a frequency. And other people will be in resistance to the frequency. And they will have the remainder of their existence here. They'll have the remainder of their life to decide if they want to stay in resistance or if they want to accept this new way of being is about letting go of all of our karma. And by karma, I mean the judgments we have against ourselves. They're not any judgments that anybody made against us. It's the ways in which we judge ourselves. It's the things that keep us in our in our difficult patterns and in our wounding. And as we shift to this new level of consciousness, we are willing to let that go, and we start living in a much more dharmic way. And the way I perceive that to be in a dharmic experience is literally like standing on the edge of a wave, and you are right there perched totally comfortably right on the edge of the wave, moving, and you don't know, like it's almost like you don't know what's going to happen next because the wave is moving and the earth has to rise up to meet you. So you're creating in the now, in the moment, with no planning, no projection, and you are being guided by the light that moves through you. So literally and we become these very conscious creators. So where we are able to see the stuff of our reality as energy. It kind of reminds me of like the Matrix, where you can see the reality as like ones and zeros, and they said that it isn't that we don't perceive anymore with the physical body. We will still have all our five senses. We will still perceive, like, this is my phone. And I would still see my phone as being a physical thing. Like I would still experience this. I would still have all the five senses, but I will have this sixth sense that carries so much more information that the five senses seem to be not that important anymore. That the five senses, we still use them not to bump into things and to navigate and to eat and stuff like that. But the sixth sense gives us 10 times more information. So we dwell there. That's where we're gravitating. And we use that sixth sense to look at the phone in a new way. So now they said that you won't be able to, using your creative ability, you won't be able to fundamentally change the nature of what something is. So this phone will be a phone because that's how it was created, unless I physically undo it and repurpose it and change it. But energetically, I can't change the fundamental nature of what it is. But I can look into the energy of the phone and I could see something that was discordant. I could see, like, oh, wow, my phone, maybe the guy who built it was having a bad day that day and some negative energy is in my phone and is creating issues. Well, I could reach in and pull that out. I could change that discordant energy. And so it's like we start to work with our reality, bringing things together and creating in a way that is truly reflective of who we are. So it's just, a shift in a way of being that is almost inconceivable to us today. And they've said that. They're like, this is like talking about dancing, is that we can talk about dancing all you want, but until you dance, you don't really know what it's like.
And it feels as if it's sooner than later, right? Before it was like maybe, and now it feels more imminent.
Pressing. They've said it's on our doorstep. It's coming. Like I feel they, at one point they said the energy is heavy. When they say heavy, it's not bad. It means full of divine, full, like the, like when I feel the angels, it's heavy. Like when they first came in, it literally felt like my head was at the bottom of the ocean because the pressure would come just to here. But it was so heavy, it was physically painful and I could barely breathe. So the feeling of that frequency, because it is a shift in frequency, feels extremely heavy to us. So when they say heavy, they mean divine grace, like the beautiful things we want. So heavy is good, but they said the energy is heavy in the spring. So something's going on in the spring, and I am fingers, toes, everything crossed that it's the flash of light, but I don't know. They haven't confirmed it.
I mean, we have like eclipses coming in the spring. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in the spring.
Astrologically, it could definitely pair up with that. And there's some scientists that recently decided to point the Hubble telescope at Orion's belt, and they were looking at the star Betelgeuse, which is a very, very old star. I know it sounds like Michael Keaton Beetlejuice, but it's spelled totally differently. I know, me too. And but it's apparently a very old star that's getting ready to supernova. And they can see, because of the chemical composition, what they can read through this telescope, they can see that it will supernova at any moment. And of course, at any moment, what that means to us, because it is so far away, it takes so long for that light to travel to us, for us to see it. It actually has already happened, and it would have happened in like the 13 or 1400s. We are just now going to experience the light because it just took that long. So it's already happened, but it's coming. The light is coming, and the light could reach us anytime. It is imminent, pressing. It could be now. It will probably be in our lifetimes for sure, but it could be tomorrow because you know what I mean?
And will we feel it?
They said
it will know it's happening.
They said it will light up the sky. It will be like a massive light that will stay in the sky for like 100 years. So it will be almost like a second moon, is what they said. So it will be really bright. But no debris or anything like that. We're far enough away that we won't get like debris or, asteroids or anything damaging like that.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like something physically we can see that's constant.
Yeah. So that could easily be one of the waves of light. It could be this one. I don't know. But I just think it was so interesting that here the angels have been saying, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. And then out of the blue, I think it was that scientists did this and they published this study. And then it was just like, all of a sudden I was getting like 50 people. It was like, have you heard about Betelgeuse? Like, wow. Okay. That is amazing. It could be. Or people are also saying the sun is reaching its solar maximum, a phase of solar maximum in 2024. I was
literally just about to ask you that, because you mentioned that earlier where you said we're at our solar maximum, and I wanted you to explain what that meant.
Yeah, I am not, this is not my area of expertise, but the sun goes through cycles, like everything goes through cycles. And during a solar maximum period, there are more solar flares than in a solar minimum. So we have much more solar activity during a solar maximum. And that's where we are. I think it starts in 2024, goes to 2025, or maybe it starts in 2025. I'm not sure, but we are reaching the peak of when the sun would be likely to have X-class flares and stuff like that. So there's certainly things out there in our, universe that could match this description the angels are giving us of a flash of light for sure.
And so when they talk about the kind of light that's coming in, and I feel like, everything else they have said about kind of this time of intensity and things are going to be hard, and they have been. I mean, I feel like it's been kind of no rest for the weary since pre-pandemic, straight
Yeah.
through. There's
Yeah.
a new big thing that keeps kind of arresting the whole world at the same time.
Yeah.
Does it correlate? Does the light correlate with that shifting or no?
The flash, my understanding of the flash of light is, like they said, it will be the moment that changes everything, that shifts everything. So I think it will be like we've been through this period of so much. It's the polycrisis, right? That it's like every time you turn on or look at the internet, it's like some new horrible thing has happened. And
Horrible.
these things are of a scale that in the past they would have been on the front page for weeks. And now
Yeah.
it's one day and then it's replaced with the next crisis.
Yeah, we don't have
So,
time.
and we are right. So, and it seems like we are just heading into more and more and more. Like there's so many trends and so many areas where people are like, this is not sustainable, right? The national debt, not sustainable. The economy, not sustainable. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things, the war, not sustainable, so many things. And so, like, does it all come to a head and become crazy town? Yes. Like, basically, yes, it all comes to a head and becomes crazy town. And the flash of light is what changes. I think that there is no way that humanity can change unless, like, the world can't change. The problems, the intrinsic problems of our world that we look at, the deforestation of the Amazon, for example, how will we ever change that? Our systems are so large. Like, how do you work on that even? How do you create change when there's so many dynamics at play? And the only way to do it is to change us. And so that's what's changing. So we change, and then that changes everything. And so when we perceive, they said that in the long run, we become the guardians of the earth, that we feel the earth like ourself, that we understand that we are one with the earth. And it's really cool. Somebody shared this with me the other day. They were talking about it, that it was like that idea that imagine you were building a building and you would be like feeling not only where do I want to build the building, but it would be, where does the building want to be? Where does the earth want the building, right? We are in harmony with our world.
Yes, I love that.
And yeah. And so that's the difference. And I think, does it happen overnight? No, because not everybody is going to be receptive to the flash of light. I do know those people who want to stay and live out their karma have that right to do that. Everybody has free will. And then when they die, of whatever way they die, if natural causes, could be in 40, 50 years, when they die, they will, if they want to stay in a karmic construct, and some people will, and there's absolutely no judgment about that, because for some people, they will know that their soul will grow faster in a karmic construct, that when they're confronted with their own polarity all the time, they will make faster progress in their own spiritual development. And that's a perfectly valid and wonderful choice. So if they choose that, they will go to a new planet that will be in a third dimension karmic construct. But people who reincarnate here or come here after that will have to come into this new vibration. They will have to come into this new frequency, and they will be living in the dharmic perspective. Yeah,
And
I don't know if I even answered your question. I just started going.
I don't even remember what my question was, but it's fine. Whatever you said was excellent. We talked a little bit on the podcast last time. I'm trying to remember, and I asked a question about the earth and like if she kind of signed up for the like kind of the destruction to get here, like if she was willing. And you were like, maybe I'll ask. And I'm like, I wonder if you ever asked that. It was something like, did she like this is kind of her time, like her renaissance of like,
It is.
right,
Yeah.
changing frequency. But it was like, did she sign up and kind of allow, like, say, okay, like I'll kind of back off for this period of time when the destruction comes, like I'll take it, like I'm going to take it. But then at a certain point, it's about moving forward. Did you ever get any answers
Yeah,
or
and
talk about
the
that?
best way they have shown for me to understand that is to say the earth is just like us, and that the earth is going through her own evolution. And so that we are like the neurons of the earth, that we are her thoughts. So our evolution is completely intertwined. So literally, like, think about within us all of the negativity that we have. That's the earth's thoughts. So she has all that negativity in her. And that negativity, those negative thoughts, and we have also beautiful, wonderful thoughts. So she gets all those too. She gets all the love. She gets all the
Right.
care we have for each other. That's her too, right? She is our best and our worst. She is us. We are her thoughts. But she then stores the feelings inside, right? And that has to come up. So that's going to be the earth crust shifting. That's going to be, maybe volcanic, like think of Tonga, right? Like giant
Yeah.
eruptions of emotion coming out. That's going to be that kind of shifting where she releases, just like we release. We have to sometimes have an eruption to release the pain that we have inside, that we have to express it. Sometimes we express it gently and sometimes we express it violently. And she'll do the same. So it is that understanding that this is her, that it is not a thing that we are doing to her. We are her. And what's happening to her is what's happening to us. So there's this intertwinement where literally we are her thoughts. So, and that's why they say that just by being the light, by being here, you change everything. That, and the goal, the reason why so many volunteers, as we call them, came to Earth right now is that, and the reason, and this was a very interesting conversation, that at one of my retreats, Yeshua came in
Mm.
and he said, this time is different. And the time that he came, it could be one. It could be one soul that came, that planted a seed, that planted an idea. And he said, in this time, it can no longer be one. It has to be many. So there's not like one single reincarnation of a person that's going to come and lead
There's
us
no
all to
Messiah.
greatness. No Messiah. He says it
Sorry,
has to be many.
everybody. We
Yeah,
just lost a
sorry.
lot of you just lost a lot of religious followers.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that won't happen. It's just that that's not what's needed for the shift. So he didn't say, there was no, he basically said what will create the shift this time is the many. And what it means is that many, many people who are very high vibrational beings have come to the planet right now for on purpose to hold the light in order to shift the collective from within. So the idea is that the collective consciousness cannot be changed externally. It has to come from within us. And so the only way to do that is we have to come and we have to incarnate as a human. We have to live a human life. We have to go through all the trials and tribulations of being human. And we have to come back to ourself and then bring that light into the collective and change the collective for everyone. And so that's the job. That's the job, the role that we are playing. And so in that sense, when they talked about Christ consciousness, that is what it is. Yes, I would say the Messiah's come back. It is all of us.
All
It
of
is
us,
all of
right?
us who are embracing this. It is the many. Yeah. Who are becoming the light and shifting the collective consciousness from within. Right. And that's how we then help the earth that is her. The collective consciousness is her thoughts.
It's so funny because when you said part of this shift is this harmony with Mother Earth a little bit, this harmony with
Yeah.
like how it works. I feel like that, I mean, obviously that's been happening for a long time, but I feel like there was a big shift of that starting with COVID. Like to me, that was one of the bigger gifts I think COVID gave a lot of people because it did, a lot of people left cities.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because, and whether they were consciously aware of it or not, it was like most people when you talk to, they're like just wanting to be in nature, wanting to feel the calm, and
Yeah.
a lot of them didn't go back because of
Yeah.
just this. And I've noticed it talking to people, whether they realize it or not, if they're on point, like, nope, I want this in my life or this, you can tell they live more closer to harmony with it than they did
Yeah.
before. And I find it
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, I find that to be, I think it is amazing, absolutely amazing. And I feel like that was one of the reasons why the experience of COVID was really the beginning of all of this. It was the
I
thing that
agree.
set it all in motion. And I mean, and I look at that like, yes, absolutely. The earth, like think about, there was dolphins in the canals in Venice, right?
Yeah.
Because it became not
Clean.
polluted anymore, right? It was so clean that the dolphins came back to the canals of Venice. Like that's, wow, amazing. And that happened everywhere, right? They started seeing wild animals coming into areas where they never had been. And, and areas of nature, restoring themselves because of the lack of pollution, because we were all sitting still. So it was amazing to see that. And then you're right that people changed their habits and they started discovering, okay, wow, I love being home more and I'm able to invest more in my relationships. I find my world more fulfilling. I've freed 2 hours of every day because I'm not sitting in traffic anymore. And now they're keeping that, right? It's now a benefit to be able to work from home. We have Zoom, right? You know what I mean? Like people have the technology that stepped in, which is that influence of Aquarius that stepped in to help us to have this. And this is an influence that we're heading into in this shift of consciousness is the influence of decentralization. So being decentralized means that we are not going into the office. We're staying home and we're working from many different places and we're investing in our local community and our local, like, how do we get our social needs met? We have to know our neighbors, right? We have to get to know the people around us. We have so we structure our lives very differently. But then if you see the whole web unraveling, this is where it gets fascinating to me, is then they talk about, the angels have been talking about bank failures since 2020. They had a whole series of messages that came through about the economy, and they were really focused on banks closing, which to me at the time seemed like crazy town. Like how, like to have bank runs, like bank closures. And they talked about how you won't be able to shift you won't be able to move money. They were talking about all this. Well, then it happens, right? And the second wave of bank crisis that could come, everybody's talking about the failure of commercial real estate because of COVID, because
No one's
offices
going to
are
the
no longer
office.
being used. So look at the unwinding, right? Like we have this thing where this shift moves away from the centralization where we are all being collected into buildings, which then fuels a certain structure of the economy. It's all built to hold this one structure in place. And the piece that moves is us. We stop going. And so then that starts to unwind the structures, right? The banking system that loans to the, developers and all of that. And not that there's any judgment against that. We needed those structures up until now, but the world is changing. And the structures that kept us in a particular way of being, which was not necessarily harmonious with humanity, right? It didn't give us the time and the space to explore who we really are, to follow our joy, right? We were really kind of slaves to the clock, slaves to the 9 to 5 grind. And we're trying to unwind all of that so that we can create a life that's fulfilling, that's full of connection and relationship and whatever we need, right? Self-expression. And so COVID was the start. It's amazing to see it, but it was.
No, it was, and it's so interesting because, and I know what you're going to say to it, but we should have the conversation anyway. It's so interesting because it feels like as people are, letting go and reconnecting, and I know you've been saying like part of this call for us is to change our perspective and unify, and
Yeah.
then right when you feel like you're over the hump, something else gigantic happens that just feels like it crumbles all. Like, so what's happening in the Middle East now, and happening in other places too, but for some reason we're all focused on one specific war,
Yeah.
even though it's happening in many places. It can't get uglier, and
Yeah.
it's only fueling so much more hate, not only unfortunately for the players involved, so much more hate for them on both sides. Like each side just hates the other side more and more with every passing day. And then
Yeah.
it's like trickling into, across the world, it's trickling into other people's opinions. So it's just like,
Yeah.
oof. And, we're about to go into another election year. Have they said anything about the election year?
They, in the past, not recently, but in the past, they talked about, and they had some really pretty, what felt really out there at the time because it was before any of this stuff happened. But now it's like, oh, okay, that actually we're halfway there already. They have talked about the US falling apart, and when they first said that the US would no longer be the United States, that it would be like multiple different countries,
Ugh.
that was shot. Like I thought, okay, that's like so, but now it's like, yeah, we're practically there. We have, and we have, you could see that happening because things are so polarized.
So
And
polarized.
what they said at one point, and I'd have to go back, and this was years ago that they said it. They talked about a leader whose followers felt disenfranchised. So who does that make you think of? And this was years ago, before the whole election scandal, right?
Right.
So the leader whose followers felt disenfranchised, they said a leader would die, but not through malicious cause. The leader would be like, it would say it would die in a night. They said it would be like they would try to get him to the airport, but to the hospital, but he wouldn't make it, and that it would create a massive uprising in the people who felt disenfranchised. They felt like their leader was gone, and so it would create turmoil, and this would then create more separation in the country. So they didn't name names, but it certainly kind of sounds Trumpy to me. I don't
It
know.
does
And I don't,
sound.
you know what I mean? I don't know. But some people are like, no, I don't know. Who knows?
I'm just
But
impressed
that
he's
was
dying not of malicious causes. I think that was the biggest
right.
surprise out of everything you said.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. And and the thing is, but imagine if that happens with all the suspicion and distrust, even if either one of them, if Biden or Trump were to die of natural causes, there would be so much suspicion that it was not of natural causes.
Even
Do
though
you know
they're
what I
both
mean?
like so stressed out and so old,
Yeah,
like you'd think,
so stressed out.
like both of them.
Yeah.
Poor I.
Yeah, but you can imagine how people would feel if when things are so heated, especially when you see things like that Putin's main critic just got poisoned, and so so they're that's a whole. So we're in a climate of that. We're in a climate where people are. It's that what exactly what it's funny. The angels were talking about revenge, where leaders are
Yep.
taking revenge against other, or institutions taking revenge against other institutions. So I don't know, but so in any case, the election could be crazy town. It could be absolute crazy town. And
It's so funny because I
but that is
keep,
something they said that a long time ago, and at the time none of these things were even on the table. But the interesting thing is now I can absolutely see, and the fact that they chose that what at the time seemed to be a very bizarre word, people who felt disenfranchised. But now, like the
mm-mm,
angels, it has multiple meanings, right? They
yeah,
really felt like their vote didn't count. That the votes weren't counted properly,
right.
so they feel that strongly, and or many people in that movement feel that strongly. So I think it speaks to that.
It's so interesting because I haven't had, I mean, I thought about it. I was like, it's pretty much March, right? We're talking about the March forecast. So let's just say
Yeah,
that
yeah,
the election's less than a year. And it just doesn't feel like that. Like and maybe it's just me. I'm like, energetically, I don't feel it at all. And I keep
yeah,
wondering, like, what's up with that? Is the election going to happen? Is something weird going to happen? Or like the players, like you
yeah.
just said, going to pass away? Is there not going to be, you know, it just keeps feeling like something is not of the norm as far as just how it's normally flows.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, it isn't because I think one of the pieces that's missing, and I mean, this is just my own personal opinion, and it's not anything I channeled, but it's just that I have heard so many opinion polls where people are not excited about either candidate,
Right.
and so it doesn't feel like a normal thing. It feels like a thing where people are sort of like
Checking out.
checking out. Yeah.
I agree with that actually. Have the angels talked at all? And I know this actually loops in with perspective, but do they talk about what's happening with the idea of truth during these times?
Oh, interesting. I would say adjacent to that, one of their favorite topics is trust.
Mm,
And they say that that is huge and important. They have talked about, it's funny because they have one little line at the end of this, which was so
oh,
interesting. Here it is. Uh, they said, and this shall play out. They're talking about this revenge of one
mm-hmm.
institution against another. They say, and this shall play out in multiple ways as institutions do beget history and create for themselves and document what truth shall become. But the knowings and the
Hmm.
beings are held in the bodies of those caught in the transfer of power, and the shades of illusion hover gently upon them. So
Ooh,
basically, they're saying that, yeah. So basically, humanity, yeah. So it's an interesting concept of that. They're basically saying, yeah, that the concept of truth and history, that it's all up for
it's all up for
it's all
grabs.
individual perspective. And remember, the angels are not at all judgmental of anything. Like they
No.
won't look at anybody's journey and say this person's right, this person's wrong. They look at everything as experience and learning, and it's all founded in love and ways that we love each other. We sometimes love each other by hurting one another, which sounds hard, but it may be the hurt that we needed to see something about ourselves.
Well, I mean, we talked about
So,
that on the first podcast, like through the relationships
yeah,
and divorce, which is like sometimes the person you hate the most signed up for that job. And so
yes, exactly,
that's
exactly.
the hate is fueled with so much love as a soul, as a higher
Yeah,
self.
yeah. So the concept of truth is a loosey goosey concept because it's always the truth of one person's perspective. And I remember being like, it's funny. Like I remember in my 30s how I started really reading a lot, and I liked stories, and I'm a Jane Austen fan. I love Jane Austen
Me too.
books, and those books. What I love is that the main character is always like above reproach. The main characters, everybody's like as you're hearing the story, you always see it from her perspective and how like she has good intentions, and you as the reader, you understand her good intentions. You understand that she's like, you get her, and the book is written in such a way that you see her in this really favorable light. And I read the books, and I remember knowing at the time I was reading the books, wishing that life was like that,
Mm,
wishing that people would see your intentions as they really are and see you as opposed to seeing you through their projections. And this was mostly coming from the fact that I was in a relationship, a marriage, where my spouse was seeing me through his projections, right? That he couldn't see me as I was. He
I've
was
been there.
constantly projecting his own resistances and seeing me like, and so, and it was just that sadness of feeling like I'm not being perceived accurately, and or as who I am. And so it was that idea, that longing for, if I could only be the narrator of my own life, and then everybody would see me as I am and know that I mean well, and know that, you know what I mean, that my intentions are good. And I think that that one of the yeah, so it's a challenge. I think the concept of truth is going to be skewed depending on whoever tells it, because it's always told from behind the veil of our own wounding. So I think
Right.
if we let go of the concept of truth and say, okay, truth is relative. Truth is always, well, you could have any set of circumstances, but you have 50 different people witnessing that set of circumstances. You're going to have 50 different truths. And so 50 different understandings of why and what happened. So I think we have to get to the concept of trust. And that is one of the hardest things we can do.
So
Yeah.
when they talk about this March wave of trust, I mean, right? Because that's a little bit of that first thing where you're like,
Yeah.
almost energetically, they're rewiring us to be able to get rid of like the holding on to the truth, like your truth, to be able to just begin to trust. When I look at stuff like in the Middle East right now, I'm assuming in March they're experiencing hopefully a similar thing, because that's where I'm like, oof, that is hard. Like it's hard enough to do it with your own parent or your best friend or your whatever the smaller things
Mm-hmm.
are. But I can't imagine generations and generations of distrust that's been,
Mm-hmm.
on both sides constantly been compounded,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
on both sides constantly, you don't believe my truth, you don't believe my truth, and it just keeps getting uglier and uglier. Oof, how like I wonder if they've
Okay, so
talked
you know
about
what's
it.
so awesome about that? It's almost like we scripted this, because isn't that exactly what their first concept was? They talked about in what's coming in March. It is people who are in intractable disagreements, like just exactly what you're talking about. They
Yeah.
said that in March we are getting energies that will help to resolve those, that will diminish the feelings of resistance. Isn't
I
that
mean,
funny? That's literally, we just worked full circle all the way back to what we talked about at the start. Isn't that cool?
yeah, no, I mean, that's actually, it's beautiful. Because that's the part where I'm like, it
Yeah.
feels irretractable. Like it just feels like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I agree. When you look at the degree of hurt and the
because it's generational
generations.
too. It's
Yeah.
not just
Hmm.
yesterday, and
Yeah.
it's not just it's
Yeah.
generational on both sides. I know not everybody likes to say that, but it's constant. It's been
Yeah.
generations and generations, and there's truth in all of it. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I mean, it's almost like you need that magic wand, because I don't know how
Hmm.
else,
I think so too. Yeah.
because I
And
don't
it
know
is
how
all
else people can
frequency.
get
So
there.
the magic wand is possible because it's everything is frequency, and frequency is real. Energy is real. And so if we are exposed to a higher frequency, it can change our thoughts and feelings. It can shift our perspective. And so it's possible. It really is. And to me, it's inevitable. If you think about the fact that we are in this solar maximum, we have these waves of light that are coming. Light is consciousness. And if there's more consciousness coming to the planet, we become more conscious. And so we shift. We see each other differently. That idea, that desire I used to feel so strongly to be seen, that becomes reality, where you will feel my intentions. Like we will connect telepathically, and you will feel what I'm feeling. And there would be no chance you could misunderstand me, right? Which is amazing.
You have to trust. I
It's
love
living
it.
on the
I mean,
wave.
I think the
Yeah.
living on the wave. I think the forecast was amazing, and always chatting with you is just heart filling, because I just love you so much. So
Thank you,
thank you
Cal.
for taking the time. Thank you for being here. And
I
thank you
definitely
for
would always
just,
say yes. You are awesome.
and thank you for just helping humanity. You're helping us all navigate a really tough time. So I'm
Thank
appreciative, I
you.
think, for many people, for you.
Thank you, for you
Thank
too.
you.